Welcome to those of you here in the sanctuary. Welcome to those of you who are online watching this Backstage pass. And I need to turn my volume on my phone down. We got 30 or so people online, so welcome to you from wherever you are. My name is Andy Bryan. I'm lead pastor here at Manchester United Methodist Church. And a Backstage pass is a time for me to share as transparently as possible about some aspect of the life of the church. We've had several Backstage passes that we've done here at Manchester, and you can find all of them, by the way, at manchesterumc.org/backstage, where they all have been logged. And I realized today, or a couple days ago, that the first Backstage pass I did was in March of 2020. You guys remember March of 2020? Oh my God. It was like, it was in here. It was not Facebook Live. It was in here, although we have the video on YouTube. And the first thing I said was, how many times have you all washed your hands in the last hour? I was like, that's how I opened up the thing. And because remember that? We were still like, we just have to wash our hands a lot and we'll be fine. Turned out we didn't wash our hands well, and so 2 years later, here we are. But the Backstage pass that one was about General Conference, actually. So at that time, there was a General Conference upcoming for the United Methodist Church. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But for tonight, we're going to talk about the current state of our denomination. We have folks from Manchester UMC here, but some folks from other congregations as well. Welcome into this space. Be at home here, please. And obviously, online, people could be just about anywhere at this point. So I'm glad you are here for this. Let's gather ourselves and center ourselves and have a word of prayer as we begin here. Coming to this space, God, and being gathered online, we are aware of your presence. And so we pray for an outpouring of your Spirit tonight. Heighten our senses to become more and more aware of you. Help us to have this respectful and honest and grace-filled conversation surrounded by your loving Spirit, guided by the good news of your gospel, and hopeful for who we are as followers of your Son Jesus, as Christians who happen to be calling ourselves Methodist, as people of the connection. Guide us into your chosen future, so that we can be the church that you want us to be. All of these things, Lord, we pray to you in the name of Jesus and in the presence and power of your Holy Spirit. Amen. The first thing I want you to hear, and maybe the most important thing I want you to hear, is that right now, at this very moment, I am incredibly hopeful for the future of the United Methodist Church. Unimaginably hopeful, inexpressibly hopeful for the future of the United Methodist Church. Like, I can't even begin to describe. Like, in this space, the past 2 mornings, there have been like 110 kids and about 30 youth and various adult volunteers doing our VBS week. And it happens at everybody's church, I know, but there's just energy and life, and the Holy Spirit is active and vital and vibrant and guiding us into this future that we might not be able to see or tell what it's going to be exactly, but it's in God's hands. And so I am incredibly hopeful about the future of the United Methodist Church. There's a couple of reasons that I'm hopeful about the future of the United Methodist Church. One of those reasons is that I believe Jesus. Anybody with me? I believe Jesus when he says things like, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I mean, I kind of believe that. He said that to Peter in Matthew 16, on this rock I will build the church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Now the gates, of course, the city gates in the ancient Near East, that's the place of power and authority for that particular spot. So when you talk about the gates of hell, you're saying the power of hell, the authority of hell is not going to prevail here. The power of hell is not going to prevail over the church. Hell has no authority here. The church is going to be just fine. So reason number one that I'm hopeful for the future of the church is that I believe Jesus. And I believe the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I'm hopeful. The second reason, more specifically, is that I think United Methodism has something to offer the world that the world really, really desperately needs right now. And I have believed this my whole adult life. I think the unique ethos of Methodism is something that the world really needs. I think United Methodism has something to offer the world, and I think we have a video that looks like what that thing kind of is.
There was a moment when each of us chose to be UMC. We found a home in a local church, a place to share, pray, serve, learn, and grow. Our story joined with others and became part of a global connection. Together, we are making a difference. We see it in a congregation that is rebuilding their community after a natural disaster. We see it in the smiles of people who are searching for meaning and found it in the sanctuary of a United Methodist Church. We see it in a missionary dedicating her life to serving, supporting, and loving people others may forget. We see it in the millions of hearts that have been warmed in our Bible studies and vacation Bible schools. We see it in people tirelessly challenging the status quo and taking a stand for what's right. We see it in local churches who build trust and partnerships by nurturing faith, filling bellies, and providing care. Together, we are transforming the world. We are present in more than 100 countries, speaking many languages and representing diverse cultures. But our 43,000 local congregations all share a Wesleyan mission and ministry, a rich history, a dedication to service and outreach, and a passion for following Jesus through worship, prayer, and the study of Scripture. And together, more than 12 million members strong, we are the people of God called United Methodist. We are the church together. Let's continue to be UMC.
I gotta say, the first time I saw that video, I did tear up. That's how big of a Methodist nerd I am. I think it just looks and feels and smells Methodist, that ethos that we all know. So, Methodism has something to offer the world and has for a long time. And I am very hopeful for the future because of those two reasons. Now, that future may be a little unclear. That future may be uncertain at this time. The future probably looks a lot different than the present, not to mention the past. I mean, that's the nature of the future, right? It looks different, it's uncertain, we might not know, but please just remember that uncertainty is just a more scary way to say possibility. Possibility. The future is open to the possibilities. So for tonight, my purpose, my hope is to be as clear as I possibly can about the current state of affairs in our denomination. I'm very much committed to transparency and have been my whole ministry. And as much as I can share, I will share. I'm going to share some stuff about context of our church, a little bit of recent history, some kind of current state of affairs stuff, and then speculate about what the near future might hold for us. And be as transparent as I possibly can about it. This is just me talking about my experience in the church as an ordained elder in the Missouri Annual Conference for 22 years and a member of the Missouri delegation to jurisdictional and general conferences the past couple of times, a member of the Board of Ordained Ministry for our conference, that is the board that makes decisions about ordination, among other things. So I'm sharing board of trustees of one of our United Methodist seminaries. So I've got a little experience with I dabble in Methodism here and there. I have bits of experience that I'd like to share with you. So first thing is context. I don't know where everybody is, so I'm going to kind of give some overview stuff that might be, you might already know, but someone sitting around you might not know this. So we're going to kind of give a general context to kind of get everybody basically on the same page. The first thing that I want to say in a general statement is that the way our denomination is organized is an 18th century model of organization. We have an 18th century organizational structure that really hasn't changed very much since it was first initiated. And I'm not a math major, but I think we're living in the 21st century. So you can already see some potential problems with a system that's not just a couple of generations too old to function in the present moment, but we're talking a couple of centuries too old to be flexible and responsive enough for our present moment. We have an enormous bureaucracy, an enormous hierarchy. So it starts with a central circle that's called the General Conference. And the General Conference is kind of the legislative body of our denomination. And we never make decisions by individuals, we always make them in conferences. So the decisions for the entire denomination are made at the General Conference level. And then the concentric circles spread outward from there. So the next term to introduce you to is jurisdiction. The jurisdictional conferences, of which there are 5 in the United States. The decisions that are made at jurisdictional conference are basically bishops. We elect bishops and assign bishops to their various places. That's what happens at jurisdictional. So general makes decisions for the whole church on rules and regulations and procedures and process. Jurisdictional elects bishops and appoints bishops to serve. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a little bit. The next ring out, see, my marker is already failing me, is annual conferences. Can anybody guess how often an annual conference meets? So every year, the annual conference meets. Our annual conference is Missouri, the state of Missouri, 750 churches in the state of Missouri. And the annual conference exists to resource the local congregations. And so we get to the local congregations on the outer ring, and we have what we call charge conferences. The local congregation makes decisions at a charge conference. So we've got general conference, jurisdictional conference, annual conference, and charge conference. And the whole energy of the system is supposed to go from here outward so that the general conference is resourcing and equipping outward into where actual ministry happens. Actual disciples of Jesus Christ are made for the transformation. Like perhaps a disciple or two has been made at General Conference. I'm not going to discount that possibility, but the place where the mission of the church actually happens is out here. So what's supposed to happen is the energy and resources and weight of the church gets pushed out to the local churches, to the charges, so that we can accomplish the mission of Christ together at that level. We're in a place right now where a lot of the energy and the focus and everything is here on what's happening at the General Conference. And so we got it exactly backwards of what we're supposed to be doing, right? Everybody's focusing their energy inwardly rather than outwardly to where the mission happens. Because we've got rules made here, bishops elected here, congregations resourced here, and disciples made here. So that's the basic structure of what happens in our denomination. And that's some terminology that I need for everybody to sort of have. Now, I want to also share some stuff that I've shared previously. Is this one okay? Okay. Out of all of our Methodists, in the church, 12 million of us globally, data quite clearly shows. It's not even like iffy. Data quite clearly shows that the overwhelming majority of United Methodists want to be United Methodists and stay together. And so things that we're hearing about splitting the church, well, it's not really splitting. It's not like splinters are falling off. Because the overwhelming majority of United Methodists, somewhere like 75, maybe even 80% of United Methodists want to be United Methodists. Like that video, BUMC. And that includes disagreeing about things, by the way. Like the overwhelming majority of United Methodists, imagine this, can like disagree with their friends and still be friends with them. Huh? Like you would think that's just an impossibility anymore. But when you poll United Methodists, it's quite clear that there's a small percentage who are wanting to leave at this point. And it is important to say that that is true no matter what their opinion of marriage is, no matter what their opinion of ordination of LGBT persons is. Whether they're like on the traditionalist side of things or on the progressive side of things, the overwhelming majority want to stay together because we believe we can do more together than we can individually. In other words, what I'm trying to say here at the beginning, planting some context, is that when the United Methodist Church eventually does drop the prohibitions on marriage and ordination, the vast majority of people who are traditionalist in their views are going to stay. They're going to stay anyway. They'll be like, I don't like it. It's not for me, but like it's my church, so what am I going to do? And they'll stay. And that's data demonstrates that quite clearly. I did a Backstage pass on this topic in 2020, which you can look at, and I talk a little bit more in detail about people who have to be in a church where everybody thinks the way they do. And I call that group of people exclusivist. Like, I'm a United Methodist and I'm a proponent of marriage equality, and if everybody in my church doesn't think like me, then I don't want to be in that church. That's an exclusivist point of view, right? Everybody needs to think like me on these issues. As opposed to an inclusivist point of view, which would say, I'm a United Methodist and I believe in traditional marriage, but I'm okay in a church that marries same-sex couples because it's not for me, but it's fine if they want to do it that way. I'm inclusive. I don't have to agree with everyone in order to be in that church. This exclusivist club, this exclusivist group, that's probably 20% of United Methodists. Whether they want marriage equality or traditional marriage. This is probably 80% of United Methodists. So in the future, as the church emerges, we might be smaller than we were, but we're not going to split. You see what I'm saying? The word split is a misnomer. It's not really demonstrating the accurate conditions around us. Okay. So I covered that in the previous Backstage pass. I went into more detail. If you want to check it out, please do so. So that's kind of context. And I went really fast. Any questions about the conferences? That sketch of conferences, general, jurisdictional, annual, charge.
When you talk about that, talk about worldwide Methodism.
So the question is about, is that it worldwide? Yes, the general conference is worldwide. When the general conference gets together, there are 860 delegates from all the nations in which there's a United Methodist Church, translating things into 7 different languages so that we can proceed with our business there. It is a global reality.
Can you explain what central conferences are?
Thank you. So the next ring out from general was jurisdictional. I should have also included central. In the United States, the jurisdictional conferences elect bishops. We have 5 in the United States. Outside of the United States, they do not have jurisdictional conferences. They have central conferences. Those central conferences outside of the United States have a bit more autonomy, to be honest with you, about how they can organize and do their work than we do in the United States. Each one kind of does things their own way. And in fact, there's a push in our United Methodist Church to increase that kind of regional autonomy so that we also have that here in the United States. Thank you. Central conferences are the outside of the United States organizational structure for jurisdictions. So, a little recent history. The General Conference gets together every 4 years, unless there's a global pandemic. Turns out. And I could go back so many 4-year chunks to rehearse some history all the way back. But I'm not going to do that. Suffice it to say that every 4 years, someone comes to that general conference and says, we should drop the prohibitions on marriage and ordination. And then they say, no, we shouldn't. And then they say, yes, we should. And they say, no, we shouldn't. And they say, you're a jerk. And they say, no, you're a jerk. And then blah, 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 blah. And then it makes headlines, and everybody thinks we hate each other. Every 4 years. You know what I'm talking about, right? Every 4 years. Huge fight. And so we get to fast forward to 2016. Let's start in 2016. 2016 General Conference happened in Portland, Oregon. I was an alternate delegate at this time, and so I was sitting in the stands watching this happen when we started that fight again. We started those, it started to get ugly really quickly, and a group of delegates on the floor kind of got together, and they appointed a pastor of a small little church over in Kansas. His name is Adam Hamilton. I don't know if you've... they kind of appointed Adam Hamilton as a spokesperson, and so Adam Hamilton comes to the mic and says, look, we're going to start this again. We're doing this fight thing again. We're just going to end up doing this again. So please, bishops, could you please help us through this situation? And made a direct appeal to the bishops of the United Methodist Church. Now, this is unprecedented because bishops do not have a voice on the floor of General Conference. They only preside at General Conference. They don't have a voice. Basically, this group of people stood up and asked the bishops to come up with an idea to help us get through this impasse, to come up with some kind of compromise position. And the bishops were like, I don't know if we can do that. And the people kind of said, hey, we're the General Conference. We can do that if we vote on it, of course. So we make it as a motion, and then we debate the motion, and then we amend the motion, and then finally, eventually, we pass the motion. And it didn't pass by much, but it did pass. So we voted as a General Conference to let the bishops give us a plan. Literally, they went to a meeting, like all the bishops of the church went to this meeting that night, came back the next day and said, all right, here's the plan. We're calling it a way forward. Does anybody remember this? A way forward? A way forward. It is, it's a way forward. It's a compromise. It doesn't celebrate sexual identity, but it doesn't condemn sexual identity. It's just it just leaves it out altogether. And to establish this way forward, we need to have an entirely different General Conference that's not on the regular schedule to just talk about this. So let's call one. Let's have it in 2019, and let's have it in St. Louis, Missouri. The Chancel Choir of Manchester United Methodist Church sang for that very General Conference, and it was the first time that I met some of them because I waved at you guys from the floor down there. 2019 Special General Conference in St. Louis was, by anyone's assessment, an unqualified disaster. So the way forward was a plan. It was a plan called One Church. Whoops. It's a plan called One Church. So the General Conference met in 2019. In 2016, there was a General Conference. There was going to be another one in 2020, but this one was a specially called one. So these same delegates that were here were also here. In between here and here, one of our delegates was elected bishop. So I, as alternate, became a member of the delegation. So I was actually on the floor for 2019. The bishop's idea is one church. It's the one church plan, and it really just said, we're taking out the language of the Book of Discipline that expressly prohibits marriage of same-sex couples and ordination of LGBT plus persons. That's it. We're not adding anything. We're not celebrating sexual orientation and gender identity. We're not going that far. This is a complete compromise. We're just taking it out. It's kind of, you can, but you don't have to, basically, is what that plan said. So, like any good compromise, very few people were actually overjoyed with the one church plan. So, because very few people were overjoyed with the one church plan, somebody said, hey, this is a General Conference, right? That means anybody can submit a petition. That means anybody can submit their ideas, because it says here in our little book of discipline that at a general conference, any United Methodist in any church, any individual United Methodist member can submit a petition to a general conference. People said, no, well, this is a specially called general conference for this purpose. Yeah, but it's a general conference, so we should be able to consider any number of pieces of legislation. When this happens, we go to our version of the Supreme Court, that is the Judicial Council. And so we go to our Judicial Council and we say, all right, so is this a specially called general conference where we only consider one thing, or is this one open to all? The Judicial Council comes back and says, okay, it's open to anybody to submit a petition, but they have to submit a petition about this particular topic. So they can't submit petitions about sort of seminary accreditation or any other stuff that you would consider at general conference. It has to be about marriage or ordination. It has to be about human sexuality. And so scads of petitions got submitted to this general conference, which, by the way, was scheduled to be a 3-day conference because we thought we were only going to be thinking about one thing. Multiple other plans were presented. And so it was a mess, and it was hard, and people said horrible things on the floor. I mean, it's a matter of public record, the just absolutely hateful things that were expressed toward gay people on the floor of general conference. It was hurtful and did damage to the church, and it also, by the way, awakened a lot of what we call centrists in the church. A lot of centrists after 2019 were like, oh no, that's not my church. I don't want my church to be like that. So a lot of centrists were awakened to the reality of some of that hateful stuff that goes on. Anyway, after 2019, one church did not pass. Instead, what passed was called a traditional plan. Not only did the traditional plan keep in the prohibitions on marriage and ordination, it actually made the penalties stricter for breaking those particular rules. So not only did it not do a compromise, it shifted things even tighter than they were before. And the passage of the traditional plan also woke up a lot of centrists who were like, you know what? I don't believe in, I'm a traditional marriage person, but this is not my church. My church is grace. My church is dialogue and conversation and disagreement, but respectful disagreement. These harsh automatic penalties for breaking rules, that's not the United Methodist Church. This is absurd. And so a whole big group of progressives, liberals, and centrists were like, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. And the subsequent annual conferences in 2019 got to elect people for the 2020 General Conference. And so with this sort of attitude, like, oh no, we're not doing this. This is not my church. These annual conferences were remarkable in their election of delegations. Almost all the delegations had inclusivists. Like, people weren't voting for people for the delegations unless they said, I'm an inclusivist. I want to keep us together. And so we were heading into this 2020 General Conference, and we're like, okay, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna get rid of this harsh language. We're gonna fix this thing. And a group of people got together to do this. And there were traditional marriage folks, and there were centrists, and there were flaming liberal progressives on the farthest left you could possibly be. And they got together, and there were about 25 of them or so. And they're like, we got to come up with a way to do this, because we're not going to do 2019 again. And so what they came up with was a way to go forward that would create a new denomination for that 20% or so that wanted it, and maintain the United Methodist Church as a whole, right? So in 2020, we were going to consider what was called, in beautiful Methodistese, the Protocol for Grace and Reconciliation Through Separation. It has the word reconciliation and separation in the title of the thing. So we were going to consider the protocol. And I talked about this in March, but basically the protocol was like, okay, the UMC is going to chip in $25 million to start a traditionalist Methodist church, whatever that's going to be. And we're going to create a process by which you can go to join this other denomination, right? So it was good. I mean, it was everybody was like, a lot of people were behind this protocol because it gave people an exit. It gave it gave congregations a way to leave the denomination. Now, put a pin in the timeline for a second. Why couldn't a congregation just go on ahead and leave the denomination and join a new denomination anyway? Just like become a new denomination. So could like Manchester United Methodist Church say, I'm tired of being United Methodist, I'd like to be Presbyterian now, or whatever, right? The answer to that question is no, by the way, just FYI. The individual congregations can't just leave the denomination with their stuff. They can't just take their stuff and go, because we have a clause in our book of discipline that is called the trust clause. Individual congregations do not own their buildings. We hold this building in trust for the annual conference. I'm going to spend a little time with this. This idea dates back to John Wesley himself. John Wesley wrote the trust clause for the denomination. It was one of the ways that Wesley created a sense of connectedness, right? We don't own our facility. The church does. We are stewards of it. We serve Christ through the facility. It's not ours. We have this trust clause and have had it for generations, and it has had impact. It has had big impact on the church. Lovett Weems is a figure, a wise kind of elder in the United Methodist Church, and he writes about a period in the 60s, and he says about the trust clause, were it not for this trust clause, virtually every white United Methodist Church in Mississippi would have left the denomination in the 1960s. He goes on to say, this is not hyperbole. It is reality. I was there. And today, those Mississippi churches are among 1,000 churches led by an African-American bishop, Bishop James Swanson, that contribute significantly to the rich diversity of United Methodism. They didn't leave because of the trust clause. They would have if it hadn't been there. The trust clause ensures that United Methodist congregations are being faithful to Christ's mission. The trust clause makes sure that United Methodist congregations are being faithful to what it means to be UMC, like that video we just saw. Theologically, you can think of the trust clause this way. One of the things we celebrate is an open communion table, right? Anyone is welcome to come to the table. Why? Because it's not my table. It's not Manchester's table. I say this almost every time, y'all. It's not my table. It's not Manchester's table. It's not a United Methodist table. It's the table of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Guess what? This is not our building. This is not my building. It's not Manchester's building. It's the building that we use to serve Jesus Christ. It doesn't belong to us. And the trust clause is important for remembering that purpose, right? We don't own this place. So congregations can't just leave because of this trust clause that's in place. So what the protocol did was create a way for congregations to leave. That sort of said, we know the trust clause is there, but if congregations do X, Y, and Z, then they can go ahead and leave. And what the X, Y, and Z were have to do with paying like 3 years worth of apportionments, paying any grants that they had gotten from the conference. Makes sense. If you get money from the conference, you can pay it back. And then paying for the pension, retirement sort of obligations for retired clergy. And people like Dave Bennett are very, very grateful that that congregations continue to pay into that pension program for their retired clergy, right? So So the protocol said, yeah, if they do X, Y, and Z, they can leave. And there was thought about the formation of this traditionalist denomination. And we were going to head to Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2020. We were going to consider the protocol and sort out the trust clause. The new denomination would be formed. Traditionalist congregations would go there. That is 20% of us would go there. The United Methodist Church would then eliminate the prohibitions on marriage and ordination. And there was broad support for the plan. Like I said, the protocol had broad support and across the board theologically. And then COVID. How many of our stories have that sentence in it? And then COVID. And then COVID. So as it turns out, you can't get 850 people together in a room when there's a global pandemic. That's just frowned upon. Not to mention the hundreds of other people who are around them. So it was postponed. It was not safe to gather, and so it was postponed. It was postponed to 2021. And then more COVIDs. So it was postponed to 2022 again, and it was actually going to be, and then COVID, and so now it's going to be in 2024. Yeah. And as of this minute, my understanding is that the 2024 event is the 2020 event postponed. It's not a new one, which means that the delegations that were elected in 2019 to serve in 2020 are still going to be serving in 2024. As of this minute, that is how it is. However, that question is also in front of, guess who? The Judicial Council, to determine if it really is postponed or if this one was canceled and it's a new one. Don't you just love United Methodism? It's so easy to understand. In here somewhere, we actually tried to call another general conference. We tried to call a specially called general conference. It was going to be all virtual in May of last year. May of this year, actually. It was going to be May of 2022. And it was going to be for the purpose of amending our book of discipline in order to make it easier for us to meet in a time of pandemic like this. But the Judicial Council said, no, you can't do that because that's not in the book of discipline. So here's the thing. We tried to call a meeting to change our rules so that it would be easier for us to meet, so that we could change our rules. But by doing so, we would have broken our rules, so we didn't meet. United Methodist Polity 101, there it is. So that's a little bit of history, the past five years of history in United Methodist General Conference life. It has left a lot of people in the lurch, to be honest with you, because there was a lot of hope here. I mean, nobody really liked one church, but also not a whole lot of people actually hated it, right? It was going to just be that nice compromise place. The traditionalist delegates to General Conference, in no uncertain terms, said, we have no interest in compromising. We have no interest in compromising on this matter. We're going to actually make it worse, make it harder. And so, okay, fine, we won't compromise. You can go ahead and leave. You 20% of you who want to, go ahead. But then this one shut down, and then, I mean, it's just perpetuated this sort of stuckness that we've been feeling for such a long time.
If you think it's only 20%, how are 20% able to put in the traditional plan versus?
If it's only 20% of United Methodists as a whole who are exclusivist, how are they able to do this at General Conference? It's an excellent question. Because 20% of United Methodists as a whole want to be their own thing and leave. 80% of United Methodists are fine. Thank you. Guess who doesn't go to General Conference? People who are fine. Right? So things are fine, so I don't want to go to General Conference. The people who are, they're the ones that want to go to General Conference. So they make a point to get to annual conference, and they campaign in their annual conferences because they want to get to General Conference, and they get to General Conference because they're like, I'm going to go to General Conference and I'm going to do this thing. Whereas the bulk of United Methodists are like, dude, I just want to do snacks for VBS. And so that person who just wants to do snacks for VBS doesn't put themselves in the running for General Conference. And so that's how the minority in the larger church ends up getting a narrow majority at General Conference.
Is this an African versus U.S. issue?
So the question is about international, specifically African delegations versus U.S. delegations. It's a great question, and it's a lot of speculation about that. And it's not an easy answer. The answer is not just yes, but also it's not just no. I would just say that each delegation, you can't speak in generalizations, is all I could say. It's not enough to just say it's Africa who those delegates, right, rocked the boat or took us off track, because a huge chunk of U.S. delegates also were traditional plan proponents. So, for example, Missouri has a relationship with Mozambique. I know our congregation has a direct connection. I don't know if Washington has a Mozambique partner, but lots of Methodist churches in Missouri have Mozambique connections. Oh, hi, Kathleen. And so we know the Mozambique delegation. We know the people in Mozambique who are General Conference delegates. All of them want to be UMC. All of them, none of them want to leave the denomination. So it's diverse in Africa as it is anywhere. Yes, sir.
Question about the trust clause. Does that apply to just buildings or all church property? For example, cemeteries, parsonages, and so on.
Does the trust clause apply to just church buildings or to all church property? The answer is all church property. Good question. Upstairs. Thank you. Okay, the Judicial Council. Let me do this just real quick. I don't even think I need to write this. The United Methodist Church was formed about the same time that the United States of America was formed. And so the folks who were making those two systems made them pretty similar. You can think of the General Conference as the legislative branch of our church. You can think of the bishop and the Council of Bishops as the executive branch. They're the ones who execute the legislation that's written. And then we have a Judicial Council that you can think of as the Supreme Court. So when the legislature, the General Conference, makes a law, a church rule, and someone thinks it violates our church's constitution, which we do have one, they come to the Judicial Council and say, I don't think we can do that, can we? And they say, actually we can't, or we can. So it's the third branch of our governance system. Real quick answer. Yes, ma'am. How is the Judicial Council chosen? At General Conference. The General Conference considers those who have been nominated and takes nominations from the floor and then votes on them. I will be honest with you about that because transparency, it's shockingly quick. Like, we as General Conference delegates might have an hour or so to consider the slate of people who are up for Judicial Council. And some of them we don't even get a chance to meet. We have to ask our friends, have you met them? Do you know them? It's one of the weakest parts of our process, actually. I felt very rushed when I was a delegate trying to elect people to serve on the Judicial Council. But that's where it happens, at General Conference. Yes? Yep.
Is it just ordained on the Judicial Council, or are there laity on the
Are there ordained persons or laity on the Judicial Council? It's not just ordained. There are some, but actually not many. Most are laity.
So when someone is nominated for that position, you don't get a resume on them or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we can see their resume, we can read their resume, and most of them are lawyers or professors and that kind of stuff. But but it literally is just one afternoon. And here's their names, here's their resumes, who do you want? So it's not the best way to do things. Let me talk a little bit about the present moment now. So here in the timeline, where are we? We're about right here, right? We're in May of 2022 when a new denomination got formed. So I'm sorry, what? Ethan's waving at me from upstairs. So that's an interesting, I heard that some East Coast progressive churches are leaving because they're tired of waiting. How can they do that? We're going to talk about churches leaving in just a second. Okay. Because now we're talking about the present moment, right? And that does include some churches leaving. I wanted to start with this. In May of 2022, there was a new denomination formed called the Global Methodist Church. The Global Methodist Church is a new denomination. It is a professed traditionalist denomination. It is a denomination in which same-sex marriage will be forbidden and ordination of LGBT plus persons will be forbidden. So they just went ahead and did what the protocol was going to have done, but they did it without the funding. They just said, we're just going to go ahead and start our traditionalist denomination. In not waiting for the protocol to come up in 2024, in my opinion, they have essentially made it completely moot at this point. If they're going to go ahead and start their denomination, why do we need to pass legislation that authorizes the starting of a new denomination? Like, they're going ahead and doing it, but that's kind of my opinion rather than just describing what's going on. So the formation of this, by the way, and I'll get some terminology up here. I don't think we need the timelines at this point anymore. A lot of words, way forward, protocol, one church. What we're talking about is the Global Methodist Church. Some people can't see that and not picture a pickup truck. But, right? GMC, that's all but the GMC, the Global Methodist Church, has now been formed. It is a denomination. The primary leadership of the Global Methodist Church comes from a group in our denomination called the WCA, the Wesleyan Covenant Association. The Wesleyan Covenant Association has been around for a while. Their expressed purpose is reform of the United Methodist Church, especially around issues of human sexuality, marriage, and ordination. And so the leaders of this group are duplicates for the leaders of this group, pretty much. So one of the gray areas in the current situation of our denomination is, what denomination are these folks? Like, some of these folks are General Conference delegates. But if they're members of a different denomination, what authority do they have? And so, for example, in our jurisdiction, all the delegations have been asked to provide a verification that all of the current delegates are still members in good standing of United Methodist churches and are not Global Methodist Church folks. So they formed this denomination. The WCA is active in forming this denomination. They, in the same breath, have said they intend to stay active in the United Methodist Church. They continue to advocate in the United Methodist Church, saying that they are still going to be doing their renewal movement within the church. I want to say this. In Missouri, the Wesleyan Covenant Association and the Global Methodist Church are not really big presences. In fact, I don't know of any colleagues who have said they are in the WCA. There probably are, but I don't know of them. And I certainly don't know of any who have left to go to the Global Methodist Church. So if you hear about the Global Methodist Church, if you hear about the Wesleyan Covenant Association, it's very active south of us, for example. It's very active in the Southeast and in Texas. Some of their key leaders are in Florida and in Texas, around the Houston area, that kind of stuff. It's just not in Missouri. It's not as active as it is in other places.
Real quick question. So would you consider the GMC a branch? Because they're still under Methodism.
It's a different denomination. They are self-professed a different denomination, not a branch of the United Methodist Church.
The trust, they don't have to worry about.
That's so the question. So the question is, since they consider themselves another denomination, they don't have to worry about the trust clause then, do they? Well, here's the thing. They can consider themselves another denomination all they want to. However, they're still United Methodist. And in order to leave the United Methodist Church, they still have to follow what happened. So hold on. Hold that thought, because I think I'm going to get there. So far in Missouri, 5 churches disaffiliated in 2021. Disaffiliated means left the denomination. 5 churches disaffiliated in 2021. 11 churches disaffiliated in 2022. And I think 4, this is a moving target. I think 4 are in process in some way, shape, or form of disaffiliating. This was 21, this was 22, this is in process. So, how many churches are there in Missouri? It's like 2.5%. 2.5% of the churches in Missouri are disaffiliating. Of those 20, I think, to my knowledge now, again, I could be wrong, to my knowledge, none of them have joined the Global Methodist Church. They've all either become independent or joined some other expression of Methodism. Free Methodists have been a couple of them. Free Methodist Church is another denomination. So, did they leave their church buildings? Now we come to this question. How did they do that? How did they leave? Well, in 2019, part of the traditionalist plan, just so happens that its initials are TP. It just so happens. I mean, I'm being honest here. Part of the traditionalist plan created a way to leave the denomination that is now a part of our Book of Discipline. It's paragraph 2553, I believe. Check that note. Yeah, paragraph 2553. So paragraph 2553, which was passed in 2019 by the traditionalists who affirmed the traditionalist plan, has a way to leave. And that way to leave includes paying 3 years of apportionments, paying your pension obligations, paying back any grants that you have, and buying your building. So there are financial implications. Of the 20 that have left, of the 16 that left, all 16 of these followed the rules and left. They came to the conference. They said, we want to leave. We want to become independent. And the conference said, okay, paragraph 2553. And they said, okay, here's the check. And they left, and they became independent. Of the 4 that are in process, 3 of those 4 are churches that said, hey, conference, we want to leave. And the conference said, okay, paragraph 2553, and they said, no, we're not doing this. We're actually going to take you to court so that we won't have to do this. And there are 3 churches that have taken the conference to court so that they won't have to do that. And those churches are Morning Star, here out in St. Charles, Schweitzer in Springfield, and Sunrise UMC. Morning Star, Schweitzer, and Sunrise churches said, no, we don't want to follow these procedures, and we're going to take you to court so that we don't have to. And so they sued the conference, and the conference countersued, and it took months and dollars to figure out, finally, just about a couple weeks ago, in St. Charles County Court, a judge said, you know what, actually, Morning Star, you do have to follow paragraph 2553. we're throwing out your lawsuit. Because church law takes priority over civil law. And so you got to follow your own rules if you want to leave. I don't know if that ruling will have implications on the other lawsuits or not. I would assume it would. Ask a lawyer. I guess sometimes there's this thing called precedent that is set. So anyway, the Morningstar case has been dismissed, and it is TBA whether they're going to proceed with the following paragraph 2553 or not. So it's worth saying, now, and this is a little bit, I'm going to meddle just a little bit. It's worth saying that in this process of, oh, by the way, so this is 3 churches. 3 churches said no to this. And so there's one that's still in process they've just initiated. They haven't gone further than saying to the conference, we'd like to leave. And so that's still unclear as to how that goes. So there's 3 churches that have said no. And it's worth saying this. And I've heard this in all 3 of these cases. And so it's public. There's nothing, I'm not revealing anything that's not already out there. But in all 3 of these cases, leadership in these churches has described a theological controversy in the denomination. And as they've described and as the reason that they're leaving, we're leaving because there's a theological controversy in the United Methodist Church. And as they describe this theological controversy specifically, they all use almost identical words. The phrases are just cut and paste from one another. And they'll tell you, and you may have heard, they'll say, the United Methodist Church is a denomination that has become more comfortable with people denying the divinity and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And for that reason, we're going to be leaving. And so I, as a colleague, I know the 3 lead pastors of these 3 churches. And I actually emailed all 3 of them. And I said, hey, you have named this denomination becoming more comfortable with people denying the divinity and resurrection of Jesus without citing any examples of people actually denying the divinity and resurrection of Jesus. Could you please link me somehow to some specific examples of this happening? I may have mentioned, I've been a pastor for 22 years. I'm on the board of ordained ministry. We interview candidates for ordination on a regular basis. I'm on the board of trustees of one of our United Methodist seminaries. I've been around a while, and I have never heard the denomination becoming comfortable with denying the resurrection and the divinity of Jesus. In fact, I've never heard people denying the divinity and resurrection of Jesus, let alone the denomination becoming comfortable with it. So could you please just tell me where you heard this? And there are no examples. None of the 3 could say, here's the 6 places we heard this happen, and this is why we think it's a problem. I'm not trying to ascribe nefarious motivations to anyone. I'm just saying what is public knowledge. These 3 churches are talking about a theological controversy that just doesn't exist. They are giving their congregations a reason to leave the denomination that is false. It's a straw man argument because the United Methodist Church is not becoming more comfortable with people denying the divinity and resurrection of Jesus. And if you need any evidence from that, just go back to last Easter Sunday and watch anybody's worship service online where we all celebrated the resurrection and divinity of Jesus all morning long. So, sorry I'm meddling a little bit, but I'm upset that these 3 churches are not being forthright about why they're wanting to leave. Because the controversy they're naming simply doesn't exist. Question?
So would that also be true of the other 16 that have already?
I don't know, because they didn't make a big kerfuffle.
But all of this is pastor-led?
So the question is that theological controversy also true of the other 16? And the honest answer is I don't know, because they did it right. They went to the conference said paragraph 2553, and they said, okay, and it was done. There wasn't a big stink. They just left.
They could just say, we want to go. They don't have to say, we want to go because.
They have to have a reason. No, they have to have a reason. 2553 names, they have to have a reason to do so, and they have to tell. And they did. They just didn't make it public. They did it right, you see. These three churches made it public and made a big stink. Does that make sense?
No, I'm not understanding. You say they have to have a reason to leave, but the reason they state they're wanting to leave is not made public?
Not for these, because they just went to the conference and said, we want to leave and here's why. And they said, okay, paragraph 2553. Well, it's nobody's business. I mean, it's the conference's business.
And so if you're not at the conference, you don't know.
I mean, I'm assuming it's public record. You could probably dig into that if you wanted to.
No, I'd rather do snacks at VBS.
She'd rather do snacks at VBS. That's the kind of thing. The distinction is that these churches that sued the conference made it very public and created a lot of confusion in the process.
Do we have any sense of whether these three churches that are suing, whether it's from the leadership down or began the movement from the congregation?
The question is, do we have a sense in these three churches or any of the others, these no. I mean, these, also, as it happens, most of these are smaller congregations. And these three are larger ones, as it happens.
That's why they're suing.
So the question, because there's more money, that's why they're suing. The question was, are these leadership-led movements or congregational-led movements? I'll preface it by saying United Methodism, not just United Methodism, Methodism was, is, and ever shall be a lay-led movement. It should be that way.
Well, the influencers, though.
The influencers, right. So, with that as the framework, I've spoken with people from each of these three congregations, actually just two of the three. I've spoken with people from two of these three congregations who told me straight out that they were, quote, blindsided when it was announced that the church was going to have a meeting to vote on disaffiliation. So I don't know. That's not data-driven. That's anecdotal. But, so I don't know. Was it lay-led? Would it come from the congregation in Upswell? Was it leadership saying we're going to do this and talking about this theological controversy and mixing things up? You know, again, I don't want to ascribe nefarious motivations to anyone, but I also want to be forthright about this as much as possible. There is expense that is involved here, of course. There is time that is involved here, of course. There is COVID-19 that is involved here, of course. And the kicker is, if they'd have just waited to 2024 and we passed the protocol, then we wouldn't be even thinking about this. We wouldn't be having a Backstage Pass today about this topic, right? It's all of this anxiety in our denomination comes from a relatively small group within the denomination for the sake of their preferences. And if they'd have just waited 2 more years, we might have avoided that. The irony here, I mean, I can't help but point the irony out, that there's a group of people in the denomination that's been waiting more than 40 years to be fully included in the life of the church. And this group couldn't wait 2 years to get out, right? Again, starting to meddle a little bit, but nevertheless, I think it's important to say that they just could have waited 2 more years, been cool with everything, and just left and formed their church on their own. So in 2024, what's going to happen? Yes?
So a disaffiliation requires a 2-thirds vote from people on the roster of the church currently, right? But to bring that vote forward, what would you board and a pastor pass this, and then their congregation would be forced to a vote?
All I would say is leadership board. So the pastor can talk it up, bring information. The leadership board's the one who decides. So the leadership board says, we want to have a vote to disaffiliate. and they vote on it. And then they call a charge conference. They call a church conference. And at that church conference, they take a vote, and it has to pass the two-thirds threshold.
So when you say people were blindsided,
So they got...
their leadership board had done this, and that's what they got.
Correct. So when the blindsided came when the announcement of the meeting came out. Hey, we're going to have this meeting to take a congregational vote to leave the denomination, and this was the first time people were hearing about it.
So there's a clip at the top.
The leadership, yeah. This group. So I got a question from online. Do churches have trademark/branding rights? It's an interesting question. I mean, the cross and flame is trademarked. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Maybe it's like, can you call it Methodist Church if we've got the trademark or the brand?
Can you call it a Methodist church? Like, this is definitely, they're trying to call themselves Methodist, right? So how can they call themselves Methodist? That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. If the separation is led by the congregation, what becomes of the pastor if they succeed? What becomes of the pastor? Anybody want to find out? No, I'm kidding. If separation is led by the congregation and the pastor wants to stay, then the pastor stays. And the pastor gets appointed to a different place. So that's pretty easy, actually, to answer. Pastors have left and congregations have stayed too, so it's been the flip side of that as well. But if a congregation says, we want to leave, and the pastor's like, actually, I'm going to be United Methodist, then that person is no longer that congregation's pastor. At this point, I will enter into the realm of speculation. What's going to happen in 2024? What is going to happen at the General Conference in 2024? Or what's going to happen between now and then also? I think several things are going to happen between now and then. I think, especially here in Missouri, disaffiliations are going to continue to trickle. I don't think there's going to be a wave. I just think it'll be a trickle. I think most of them will follow 2553. Most of them will be smaller congregations. I just think that's the reality of the situation. And but I don't think it'll be a big, huge wave away. And in 2024, yes?
Are they rural churches?
The question is, are they rural churches? And the answer is, it's a mix. It's a mix between rural, suburban, and urban. Not so many urban, actually. Town churches, rural churches, and suburban churches. I think that in 2024, the General Conference is going to pass a plan that will make it easier to leave. So we'll take away 2553 and make an easier exit for congregations who want to do it. I just think people are like, most of us, 75, 80% of us are like, just please go on, just go. Let us make snacks at VBS and just go away. Also in 2024, I think the General Conference will vote to regionalize the United States. This is a biggie. I think this is really important, but it's not a very visible one. The reason it's important is because right now, like for example, delegates from the Philippines and Russia and African and all the other international delegates are making decisions that impact the United States. Decisions, for example, on like how to invest the pensions of U.S. pastors. And it's a completely different pension system in countries that are operating outside of the United States. And so we're asking global delegates to make decisions that are specific to the way things happen in the U.S. And I think what will happen is the General Conference will say, okay, the U.S. is going to be its own region, just like Central Africa is its own region, just like Central Europe is its own region, Eastern Europe is its own region, U.S. will be its own region, or something like that, and give a little more autonomy to the U.S. as a regional conference. I think it'll be similar to the Central Conferences now. So that's a bigger deal than people think it is, and it's also not like a super sexy issue. So it's like, okay, regional autonomy, great. It's going to have some impact. It really will. I do. What's that?
You think that's pretty likely to be voted?
Yes. Regionalization has big support in General Conference delegates.
What's the freedom of that? Like, what do the central conferences get to do right now that we don't get to do? What's the freedom?
Yeah. What is the freedom right now? What do central conferences get to do that U.S. can't do? And I'm not an expert here. I don't have all the details here, but I do know that the central conferences can, for example, call a central conference with much more flexibility than we can call a jurisdictional or general conference. So they can get together. They can say, hey, let's meet and meet. So they're much more free to do that. They're also much more free to organize themselves, to send bishops to places, assign bishops to conferences and pastors to churches than we are in our.
Legislation around, human sexuality?
Not at the moment, but that's possible. And that's a great point, because there are United Methodist churches. So in our nation, as we know, Obergefell changed everything, right? Before Obergefell, it was like, well, same-sex marriage is illegal, so it's a moot point anyway. But since it was legal now, we have this place in the discipline that says we can't deny anybody their civil rights based on their sexual orientation. It's like it's in there, and by not marrying them, it feels like we're denying their civil rights based on their sexual orientation. So it's like we have legal same-sex marriage is the point, and that changed everything in our country. There are United Methodist churches in countries where not only is same-sex marriage illegal, but where being gay is illegal and can be punished by death, right? So we have United Methodist churches in countries where being gay is punishable by death, trying to talk to United Methodist churches in a country where same-sex marriage is legal. It's just a completely different context for ministry, right? So around that issue, to have more autonomy would allow people to address the issues in their communities with a little more relevance, right? Yes, ma'am.
Won't there be some controversy of the General Conference about who will be seated as delegates because of the folks that are calling themselves both global United Methodists and still remaining part of the United Methodists?
Won't there be controversy in 2024 about who can even be seated at General Conference because of membership in the United Methodist Church? Yes. Absolutely there will. Absolutely.
Find that out before they can find any of the other stuff.
Like I said, I've been asked as the head of the Missouri delegation to verify with the South Central jurisdiction that everybody on our delegation is in good standing in the United Methodist Church. And I'm assuming that has happened in other jurisdictions as well. So yes, it will be. And if that can be challenged, it will be challenged. Okay, so it'll regionalize. There'll be as I said, an exit plan that'll be a little bit easier for the 20% of congregations who want to go. Also, in 2024, I feel like, yes, sir.
Can you speculate a little bit more in terms of exit plan?
Less expensive. Less expensive. I think what will happen is they will pass General Conference legislation that will say, I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be like, if you can purchase your building, you can go. Or if you can purchase your building and fund your pension obligations, you can go. I think it'll just take some of the expense away from it so that it'll be easier for a congregation to vote to leave. It might, I don't think they'll change like the vote thresholds. Because like the protocol and paragraph 253 call for 2/3 of the congregation to want to leave in order to leave. I think it should be a high threshold, actually. I think leaving your denomination is a big deal, and you should want to really do that. I mean, you should want to be unified in that, right? If you're going to go, you should want to go as a community, right? You should want to go as a church. So it should be a high threshold. Also in 2024, I'll just put this up here again. I think we'll pass the one church ideas. By that, I mean, I think in 2024, the General Conference will remove the prohibition on marriage and ordination. Just take it out. Not throw anything else in there, just take out the prohibitions and leave it up to the local pastors. Leave it up to the local pastors and the local congregations to decide. Which, in there anyway, is pastors are given the authority to decide who to marry and who not to marry. I mean, that's already in there. I can say no to any couple if I choose, and I don't have to say why. I can just say, I don't think you two are, I don't know, you don't have good chemistry. I don't have to say anything. I can just say no. I have that authority in the Book of Discipline. So if we take the prohibition out on same-sex marriage, I could still say no to someone if I wanted to. My dream for United Methodist Connection, which I've said numerous times, is that like if a same-sex couple comes to a colleague of mine down the street, hypothetical colleague of mine down the street, and says, can you marry us? And that colleague says, no, I can't. It's against my philosophical, theological view of marriage. But I know this guy named Andy down the road here, and he'd love to marry you. And so you go over to here. And also, like, if a person comes up to me and says, I can't believe you married that same-sex couple. You've weakened my marriage so much. I could say, that was facetious. Sorry about that. I can say, look, I understand exactly what you're saying. My colleague right down the street doesn't do same-sex weddings. And if you would be more comfortable in that kind of an ethos, please, by all means, because we're a connectional church, right? We should be able to connect with one another like that. But we can't right now because of that prohibition in there. If you simply take out the prohibition, you don't force traditionalist pastors to do weddings, but you also allow marriage equality pastors to do weddings. So can but don't have to is kind of the way I think about things. Hold on just 1 second. So there will be resistance to this. There will be a resistance to this change. Because remember what I said, the WCA intends to stay in the United Methodist Church. The question will be, are they members of the United Methodist Church, or are they technically members of the Global Methodist Church? And there's a fascinating little technicality about that, by the way, if you've got an extra bit of time, because the Global Methodist Church is actually legally not a new denomination. They filed for recognition as a new denomination, and the U.S. government, whoever's in charge of recognizing denominations, said, you can't be one. You just are calling yourselves Global Methodist Church. That already is a thing. It's just describing the church, the United Methodist Church. You don't have enough of a distinction to actually be a new denomination. And so they're not actually technically legally a denomination. They are technically legally a news organization. I kid you not. They are registered with the U.S. government as a news disseminating organization. They claim that they're a denomination, right? I don't even know if there's actually any congregations in this thing yet, right? It's just this organization that's been formed. So if you're in the WCA, and so what had to happen to do that was that the WCA as an organization basically is the equivalent of the Global Methodist Church. If you're a member of the WCA, you are a member. You're subscribed to this news organization, basically, right? So, like, if you're in the WCA, can you be in the WCA and in the UMC? Or are you actually in the new denomination? It's a gray area. Guess who we should take that one to? The Judicial Council. Let's let them tell us how that's going to work. Some will resist this. There will be some resistance to this, but I think it will pass, and I think it will pass by a slim margin. Maybe not. Maybe I'll be surprised, and the prohibitions will be taken away. In 2024, the most important thing by far that will happen is that the vast majority of United Methodists in the vast majority of United Methodist congregations will continue to make snacks at VBS. And love our neighbors as ourselves, and love the Lord our God with all our hearts and minds and strengths, and to do the mission of the church. And for us that happen to be here at Manchester, that means we will continue to extend the love and grace of God to all persons in our words and our actions. We will continue to create new expressions of ministry, to speak to new and emerging generations of people. We will continue to pray together, to worship together, to study and give and serve and invite together. We will continue to be the church. And in spite of all of this, that's the most important thing that's going to happen in 2024. The good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ will continue to be announced by people called Methodists here and everywhere. I am now, yeah. Open for some questions. Yeah. Oh, good, Neil. Thanks for that.
Why can't we have the second Manchester United Methodist Church? I'm just being facetious. The Baptists do that. You can go to a small town, First Baptist Church, Second Baptist Church, Third Baptist Church.
So Neil is advocating for a second site for Manchester. He wants to be on the launch team for a second site of Manchester UMC and just replicate that. Let's do it. No, we can do that. Gathering does that. How many gathering sites are there now? Like 17 or something like that? I don't know. A bunch of them. So yeah, let's do it. Where do you want to go?
I'm going to stay right here.
Okay, all right. Other questions about next year, about process? Yeah.
Let's say you're surprised that one church doesn't get passed. What would that?
Let's say that my prognostications here do not come to pass and that the one church model, the removing of the prohibitions, doesn't happen. What does that mean? It means a lot of people, myself included, will be heartbroken. It means a lot of people I don't know that it means the complete sort of final nail in the coffin for the United Methodist Church, because again, I'm hopeful for the United Methodist Church. If that happens in 2024 and this doesn't pass, we lose an entire generation of people. We lose an entire generation of everyone who is right now in their teens through early 40s. They're just going to be like, there's other places to go. I mean, I'm not going to mess with this anymore. I'm still hopeful. I mean, I'm like, the Spirit could still do something. We lose clergy. We lose all kinds of gifted, called and faithful clergy people who are like, I'm just going to go be disciples of Christ because I can marry whoever I want to, there and that kind of stuff. So, like I said, I don't think it's the last nail in the coffin, but we're going to lose a whole lot if we don't make this progress. Yes, ma'am.
Question's a little bit different from some of the others. I've seen a tendency in the last few years of United Methodist churches not to announce on their marquees that they're United Methodist Church. For instance, the one in Wildwood. No, it's got the flame with the cross. Doesn't say United Methodist Church anywhere on the marquee. And I've seen this in some others. What's going on?
So the question is, what's the deal with the trend of United Methodist congregations dropping the United Methodist from their names? And so there was a push, 25 years ago to sort of distance from the denomination affiliation. Church is church and doesn't really matter. So new churches that were formed around then would be, I even think our dear friends, our dear neighbors at The Gathering have The Gathering, a United Methodist congregation, right, or something like that. So it's like we're just going to try to minimize that association. That was a season. I feel like that may have passed. I feel like there's enough value in being connected to I'll just speak personally. There's value in being connected to a denomination, and the value comes from accountability, support, encouragement, resource sharing. We can do so much more as a connection than we can do on our own. And like I said, like we saw in that video, there's this ethos about the United Methodist Church that's sort of palpable. Like, you go into United Methodist Church, you know what I'm talking about. You can feel it. You're like, oh, this is a United Methodist Church, right? I got that, right? I feel that. And that's true all around the world, really, as we saw in that video. So I think that's a season that has come and gone. There's still some churches who are lingering with that. I don't want anybody to know I'm a denomination, but I just think there's a lot of value there personally. So, yes, ma'am. Yes. So will there be a time when the United Methodist Church will lift up and say out loud, everybody has equal rights? I think so. I think actually it's already present in a lot of our resolutions. Like if you dig into the book of resolutions, right, you see a lot of stuff that lifts up equal rights for all and all that kind of stuff. We have in our book of discipline, as I already mentioned, that we feel like we believe no one's civil rights should be denied them based on, and then there's a list of things that include sexual orientation. And so, yeah, it's in there. It's just we have some conflicting statements that are in there as well, that if removed, right, allow those others to come to the surface. So the first, at least, huh?
You know, the rest of America, other people are going to say we're hiding behind it, or we're, you know, it's not what we espouse.
Right. So say it out loud so that people can grab a hold of it. And what I'm saying is, if the prohibitions are removed, the stuff that we already say out loud is the stuff that will come to the surface, because it's already in there. Yes, ma'am.
I want to go back to the question that somebody posted who's watching online, because it's the question I have, in terms of this whole exit stuff. I think on both sides of the country, on the East Coast and the West Coast, there are churches that are tired of waiting, and they want to leave for other reasons. They don't want to be GMC, but they don't want to quietly just be who they are. So I didn't want to overlook that question that somebody posted, and I have that question too, having lived on both coasts. It's different. And it's an emotional issue for me, and you touched on it, Andy, but people are tired of waiting to be affirmed and celebrated. You know? And there's a difference between being openly celebrated and being excluded.
Absolutely.
And I hunger for that. And I just wondered if you could speak.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you lifting that up, Rebecca. The question is around churches that are affirming and advocates for marriage equality who are leaving because they are tired of waiting for things to change. We can also talk about individuals within churches that have left because they're tired of waiting for the United Methodist Church to change. Something changed within me after the General Conference of 2019, because before 2019, I used to tell, like when folks would come to me and say, we're leaving because we can't wait, I used to say, we're working on it. Just we're working on it. Just be patient. I used to say that all the time. After 2019, I stopped saying that. And I kind of said, if you feel like you need to leave, you should leave. Because the United Methodist Church does not celebrate who you are. The truth of the matter is, the hard truth, and just to be, again, as transparent as I possibly can, LGBT people are not fully welcomed in United Methodist congregations, no matter what your welcome statement says. They're only welcomed up to the point where they want to get married, because then you have to either break the rules or say no. They're only welcomed to the point where they want to get ordained. So not want to get. They're only welcomed up to the point where God calls them to ordination. And then the welcome stops, because you either got to break the rules or say no. So the condition, what's that? But they'll still take your money. So LGBT persons are only partially welcomed in any United Methodist congregation, no matter how friendly you say you are. There's always a condition on the welcome. So after 2019, I stopped telling people to stay. And when they told me they're ready to leave, I'm like, yeah, God bless you. Thank you for sticking around for so long. I can't imagine what it must have been for you to fight for such a long time for this and continue to be frustrated. I do not blame you in the least for leaving. So please, God bless you. And I sincerely wish you the best in whatever endeavor you have in front of you. That's what I woke up to in 2019 for sure. I was on the floor in St. Louis. Just a second, Herb. I was on the floor in St. Louis and frustrated by everything. I had looked across the table while this absolutely hateful stuff was happening. Delegates on the floor were saying this horrible stuff about LGBT persons in the church. I looked across at Jill Wandell, a delegate, and she was like, I think we need to leave. This is terrible. And I said, I think we need to stay, because I think we need to bear witness to this. I think we need to be here. And so we stayed. And I got up on the floor and I looked up in the gallery and my dad was up there. And my dad is a United Methodist pastor and went to General Conference every 4 years for forever and ever, and tried to get the prohibitions taken out of the Book of Discipline every time, fought for it his whole career, and now he's retired, and he's up there watching this happen to his church. And I was like, damn it, if he could do it for his whole career, then I'm doing it. Then I'm sticking with it, and I'm going to fight to make this a just system, and I'm going to fight to make this better, and I'm going to keep doing it. And that was my decision, and at the same time, anyone who wants to go, God, please, just, yes, let me help you. Let me help you figure out how to get settled in a place that does affirm you and fully welcomes you. So I can't in good conscience ask people to just stick around because it's going to get better. I just can't. Yes, online question, you're welcome. How do you ignore that the Bible says marriage is between a man and a woman? Aha! It took us like an hour and a half to get to this question, yo. Well, thanks for coming to the Backstage Pass, everyone. I don't know who this person is. I would just say I don't ignore that. I've studied that book several times. I've studied that book in its original languages. I've read commentaries on that book. And yeah, I have a different interpretation of those passages than you do. Because I feel like that's okay for us to have different interpretations of the Bible. Why do I feel like? Because I'm a United Methodist. And I feel like people who have different interpretations of the Bible can get along with each other. So I do not ignore that there are interpretations that say that. Here's what I say about those interpretations. Like, you've got your choice of biblical interpretations. You've got your choice. You can interpret those passages. You absolutely can. You can interpret those passages to say marriage is between one man and one woman, and that's the only way it could possibly be. You can absolutely make that interpretation. I do not begrudge you that. People do. People do make that interpretation. I don't. I make a different interpretation, that marriage is an expression of love between people, said in a covenant setting, blessed by God, right? And so that covenant setting, blessed by God, an expression of love, that's marriage in the church, right? So that's how I interpret those passages. Those interpretations are out there. They exist. You can read them in any number of books, and there's all kinds of varieties of interpretations in between that. So the question isn't, what does the Bible say? The question is, how do you interpret the Bible? How do you interpret the Bible? Which one of those interpretations do you choose? And if you choose the one that says marriage is between one man and one woman, I wonder if you want to explore the implications of that interpretation. I wonder if you just want to have a conversation with someone about taking that interpretation to its logical conclusion, and what actually happens there in that interpretation, and how much harm might that interpretation do. And knowing that there are other interpretations to choose from, then why do you pick this one? Why do you pick this one? Answer that question. I don't know who asked that question, but that's my response. Why do you interpret the Bible, knowing that there are other interpretations available, in such a way that does harm to people? Why? Why do you make that choice? Because that's a choice you make, right? Okay. And scene. Does anybody else have any questions about? Oh, Herb had a question. Yes, sir.
My first comment would be, Jesus Christ, one, see the pain that a gay person goes through, or a lesbian, any one of that, the XYZ, would Jesus Christ want to see the pain in those people's lives? And my real question was, any one of the 15 churches that led they could not wait for the church to finally recognize the rights of all.
the first question Herb asked was, would Jesus Christ actually want to see the pain in the faces of our LGBTQ plus siblings caused by the United Methodist Church? And I'll let you answer that for yourself. The second question was, the 16 churches in Missouri that have left, why did they leave, basically? And the answer is, it is not a matter of, they have not been public about their reasons. They have not been public about their reasons. I asked this a little bit ago. So they told the conference why. And in their negotiation with the conference, they had to express a reason. But they didn't post a video or put a public statement out like those other 3 churches did. So we could only speculate as to why those 16 churches chose to disaffiliate, unless we dug into their minutes of their church meeting that said so. So I'm sorry I can't answer that question directly. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Talking about churches leave 3 years apportionment, pension obligations, payback of previous grants, and you talked about buying back the property. How is that determined? Is that at what level of the church structure makes that? Is it
Yep.
a state team? I mean, how is that?
The question is about the disaffiliation process outlined in paragraph 2553. And those numbers, the figures around apportionments and pension obligation and grants returning, now that's a set number, right? That would be just given. But then like the value of the property and that kind of stuff, that's just a process of negotiation between the local congregation and the conference. They probably have an appraiser. I don't know the details, but it happens in the negotiation process. I've heard our Bishop Farr, say that many of the churches that have left, they, have been just very gracious. They said, yeah, we know the process, and we want to leave, and tell us what the bottom line is, and they tell them the number, and they go. And it's been a very amicable process because they've followed those procedures. Yes, ma'am. Is it a matter? Yes. Is it a matter of public record as to what those churches are who have left? Yeah, it was voted on at our annual conference session. So it would be a matter of looking at the annual conference records. I could look it up real quick, and it wouldn't be real quick, but I could look it up and find it out. But it's in the annual conference minutes and that kind of stuff. There were 2 years in which churches disaffiliated, last year and this year. 5 from last year, 11 from this year. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
We're sitting here now, and we don't know where our future holds. This building, it's very scary for me, and I'm sure a lot of people. I wish I knew more about where we were going.
So scary for the future, don't know where we're going. I also am uncertain about the details of the future, but we are going toward the reign of God on earth. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the direction we're headed is to the reign of God on earth. We are going towards the love of God. We are going towards grace, towards justice, towards peace, towards truth. That's the gospel. I mean, if we veer off that course, we're really in bad shape. And that's the direction we're headed, is toward the reign of God on earth. Yes, ma'am.
One more question I thought of. Back with all of this delay of the
General
Conference and so on, and it's been some time ago, and my memory is not as good as it used to be, but the election of bishops and retirement of bishops, I remember there was some big
Yeah, so the question is about bishops, and I have a part on there that I skipped over about bishops because of time, but let me just touch on it real quickly. When the delay of General Conference happened, there was also a corresponding delay of Jurisdictional Conference, because Jurisdictional Conference follows General Conference. So there were some bishops who were scheduled to retire at that Jurisdictional Conference. Their retirements would be recognized, and we would elect new ones to take their place. Well, we didn't have the Jurisdictional Conferences, so they couldn't retire. There's a rule. Now there's a rule in the Book of Discipline for, listen to this, you're going to love this. There's a rule in the Book of Discipline for what to do if a bishop dies while they're serving as a bishop. But there's no rule in the Book of Discipline for what to do if a bishop's supposed to retire but can't retire. So friends, literally, it is easier for a bishop to die than to retire in the United Methodist Church. But now we have a jurisdictional conference on the calendar. November of 2022, we will hold the jurisdictional conferences. They all happen at the same time. Northeast, Southeast, North Central, South Central, and Western all happen first 4 days of November of this year. At that point, we in our jurisdiction will be electing 3 new bishops. 3 will be retiring and 3 will be replacing them. There are, as of right now, 6, maybe 7 people who have expressed a call to be considered for those elections at this time. So November, new bishops will be elected. We don't think we'll be getting a new bishop. Bishop Farr probably will be assigned back to Missouri again, but it could happen. So that's the update on jurisdictional.
Thank you, because it's been in la-la land in my brain.
There it is. You've spent a lot of time here thinking about a lot of Methodist-y things. I have a great time talking about Methodism, but I'm a huge Methodist nerd. So I appreciate your patience. I appreciate those of you online, your questions there. This Backstage Pass, like all of our Backstage Passes, is now available at any time on Manchester UMC's Facebook page, on our video section of our Facebook page. We will also have a link to it archived on the website, manchesterumc.org/backstage. If I've tried to be as honest with you and as transparent with you as I can, I mixed in my own perspective several times, and I either apologize or you're welcome, depending on how you received that. But since we're all United Methodists, we can definitely disagree about things and do it graciously. Just remember, if you do have a complaint or if you're angry, you can email me with it anytime. My email address is winter.hamilton@manchesterumc.org. So just send those emails right on in, and we'll have those coffees and talk about the ways that you just hated everything I just said. That'd be great. Let's have a prayer, and we'll call it a night. Oh God, we are so grateful for the ability to disagree about things. We pray that we'll make our church look more like the reign of God, and that whatever people think about the future and the uncertainty that is definitely there, that you'll give us that faith to know that we're heading towards the reign of God, your reign on earth. We're heading towards more love and more justice and more peace and more grace. That the things we do and say together are cooperating with what your Holy Spirit is doing to make your reign on earth come to life in the world around us. God, we thank you for our connection. Thank you for the United Methodist Church and for the amazing future that you have in store for us. And God, for any controversy or splintering, may it happen gracefully and respectfully. May our disagreements be shared openly and honestly and in love with one another, knowing that we can indeed see differently, not see eye to eye on things, but still walk hand in hand as your church. God, we love you so very much. We pray all of these things to you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and by the power and presence of your Holy Spirit with us always. Amen. Thank you to everybody who joined us on Facebook. Thank you to those who came live and enjoyed our Backstage Pass together.